He looked me up and down and laughed like I was joking. "A mechanic? You?" he said. I just smiled. People like him had doubted me my whole life. But that day, I got the chance to prove him wrong, and I promise you, I didn't waste it. If you've ever been judged because of who you are, your gender, or your skin, stay with me. This story isn't just about cars. It's about power, pride, and proving people wrong. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and stick around to the very end. Hey, I'm Tasha, born and raised in Atlanta, where the summers are hot, the tea is sweet, and if you listen close, every car on the block tells its own story. Mine started young, real young. I used to sit out back with my granddad while he worked under the hood of his old Chevy. I was the one handing him wrenches, asking questions, getting grease on my jeans, and not caring one bit. Most girls were playing with dolls. I was elbow deep in engine oil, trying to figure out what made things run. That garage was my playground, and my granddad, he was my hero. But outside that safe little world, it was different. People laughed when I said I wanted to be a mechanic. Teachers would raise their eyebrows like I had said astronaut or dragon slayer. Even some family members told me to pick something more ladylike. Being a black woman in this field, it's like walking into every room with a sign on your back that says, "Prove it." And believe me, I had to prove it every day. But I never backed down because I knew I belonged there. I didn't just want to fix cars, I was built for this. They say turning your passion into your job is a dream. What they don't tell you is how many sleepless nights and silent prayers come with it. I saved for years, worked part-time at a parts store, did oil changes in neighbors' driveways, and took side jobs nobody else wanted. Every penny I made went toward one goal, opening my own garage. And when it finally happened, a small, beat-up building on the south side with peeling paint and one working lift, it wasn't much, but it was mine. I called it Tasha's Auto Solutions, and I poured my heart into every bolt and gasket that came through those doors. But it wasn't easy. Most days, when customers walked in and saw me behind the counter, they'd ask, "Is the mechanic around?" I'd just smile and say, "You're looking at her." Some would chuckle, thinking I was joking. Others would flat out ask for a man. I can't lie, some days that stung. Not because I doubted myself, but because people didn't even give me a chance. But over time, my work started speaking louder than their assumptions. Word spread. Cars that other shops gave up on came to me and left running like new. I didn't advertise much. My clients did it for me. I hired a couple of young techs, good guys with good hearts, and trained them myself. I wasn't just building a business, I was building a family. We played music, shared lunch breaks, stayed late when a job needed extra love. Some of my favorite memories come from those early days. Laughing over engine grease, solving problems together, learning side by side. Still, being a woman in that world meant walking a tightrope every day. You had to know your stuff twice as well and still carry yourself with grace. One wrong look, one raised voice, and people would label you angry or unprofessional. So I kept my head high and my work even higher. Because deep down, I knew what I was doing mattered. I wasn't just fixing cars. I was showing every little girl with a dream and a socket wrench that she didn't need anyone's permission to follow her own road. It was a slow Tuesday morning, sky overcast, radio playing old school R&B in the background, and I was elbow deep in a transmission rebuild when I heard it. That low purr of a luxury engine pulling up outside. I wiped my hands, peeked out, and saw a sleek black car, polished like glass, rims shining, the kind of ride you only see in commercials. A man stepped out, tall, sharp suit, shiny watch, not a single wrinkle on him. You could just tell. This man didn't pump his own gas. He walked into my garage like he owned the place, glancing around with that look rich people get when they're somewhere that smells like motor oil and not cologne. I greeted him with a warm smile and asked how I could help. He didn't even answer at first, just looked around and said, "I need a real mechanic." I smiled again and told him, "That's me." He blinked, then he laughed, not just a chuckle, but that full chesty laugh people do when they think you've made a joke. "You? Come on now," he said, shaking his head. Now I'd seen a lot in this business. I'd been mistaken for the receptionist, asked to get coffee, even called sweetheart, while holding a power tool. But something about his laugh hit different. Maybe it was the way he looked at me like I was invisible, like I couldn't possibly know anything about the $200,000 machine he just rolled in. But I didn't flinch, didn't argue. I just said, "Let me take a look," and motioned for him to pop the hood. He rolled his eyes, but he did it. Turns out he was having a major issue. His engine kept stalling at high speeds, and none of the high-end shops could figure it out. I listened, asked a few quick questions, and I could already feel my brain clicking into gear. As he leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, I knew I had a choice. I could let his doubt rattle me, or I could let it fuel me. And trust me, I've always run better on full tanks of underestimation. What he didn't know was he just stepped into my world. I slid under that hood like I'd done 1,000 times before, because I had. The smell of oil, the hum of the engine cooling down, the faint tick, tick, tick of metal settling. It was all familiar to me, comforting even. But I could feel his eyes on me, watching every move, waiting for me to mess up. He leaned on his car like he was at a show, like he was sure the punchline was coming any second now. The issue was tricky, I'll give him that. The car had a high-end European setup, loaded with electronic features that most techs in my neighborhood rarely touched. But I'd trained myself to handle more than the basics. Late nights with manuals, online courses, even breaking down junkyard cars just to see how the systems talk to each other. So when I started running diagnostics, I already had a few ideas. He raised an eyebrow when I asked about a software update and whether he'd had electrical work done recently. "You sure you know what you're doing?" he asked. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "You brought it here, didn't you?" I found the problem, a faulty sensor that was sending bad data to the throttle control. It was one of those things you'd miss if you didn't know what to listen for. I explained it to him in simple terms, and the look on his face was priceless, like I'd started speaking a language he didn't expect me to know. I ordered the part, and while we waited, I went ahead and checked the rest of the car. Because that's what I do. I don't just fix the thing you notice, I fix what could leave you stranded later. I cleaned his battery terminals, tightened a few loose connections, even topped off his fluids. Not because I needed to prove anything, but because that's the kind of work I believe in. By the time the part arrived, I had the install done in under 20 minutes. Smooth, clean, no hiccups. When I told him to start the engine, he hesitated, then turned the key. That baby purred like a lion. He looked over at me, and for once, he didn't have a single word to say. The second that engine came to life, smooth and strong, his whole posture shifted. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at the dashboard like it had performed a magic trick. I stood off to the side, arms crossed, quietly watching him take it in. That smug look he walked in with, gone, replaced by something closer to confusion, maybe even respect. But I didn't need his validation. The car spoke for me. He stepped out slowly, like he couldn't believe what just happened. Then he said, "My team back in LA couldn't figure it out. You did it in less than a day." I smiled and said, "Well, maybe your team needs to take a few notes." It wasn't meant to be cocky. It was the truth. I don't cut corners. I don't guess. I know what I'm doing because I've spent years getting good at it when no one thought I could. Then came the real surprise. He asked me how long I'd been running the shop, how many people I had on my team, what kind of tools I used. His whole tone had changed. No more laughing. Now he was curious, interested. He told me he was an investor, owned a chain of luxury car dealerships and repair centers, said he'd never seen someone work like that. And then he asked, "Would you consider working for me?" I didn't even need to think about it. I told him no. Not because it wasn't a good offer, it was, but because I wasn't about to leave behind everything I'd built to go fix cars for someone who didn't believe in me until I proved myself. Instead, I told him, "But I'd be happy to train your crew on my terms." And to my surprise, he said yes. He wired me a consulting fee right then and there, more than I'd made in the last 3 months. Just like that, the girl he laughed at was now the expert he was hiring. I didn't rub it in. I didn't gloat. I just went back to cleaning up my tools. Because while he may have doubted me, I never doubted myself. And honestly, that was the real victory. After that day, everything changed. Word got out faster than I expected. Clients started showing up saying things like, "You're the woman who fixed that billionaire's car, right?" I'd just smile and nod. But inside, I felt proud. Not because I needed fame, but because my work was finally getting seen. My little shop, the one folks used to drive past without a second glance, was now buzzing with new faces and new stories. And all because I stayed true to what I knew. The billionaire kept his word. I flew out twice to train his mechanics, guys with degrees and fancy titles, all sitting there taking notes from a girl who taught herself under a leaky roof in Atlanta. I showed them how to read between the wires, how to actually listen to a car instead of just plugging in a scanner and hoping for a code. Some of them were skeptical at first, but by the end of the week, they were calling me Miss Tasha, with a kind of respect I hadn't always been given. Back home, business boomed. I hired 2 more techs, upgraded our tools, even started offering free classes on weekends for young girls curious about the trade. And that's when it really hit me. This wasn't just about fixing cars anymore. It was about breaking cycles, rewriting what's possible for girls who look like me. Looking back now, I realized that moment in the garage wasn't just about fixing a car. It was about shifting something bigger. I didn't set out to prove anyone wrong. Not really. I just wanted to do what I love and do it well. But life has a funny way of putting you in the right place at the right time, especially when you've been preparing in silence for years. And sometimes, the people who laugh at you the loudest end up being the ones who teach you how strong you really are. I used to carry the weight of other people's doubts like baggage. Every comment, every side eye, every, "You sure you know what you're doing?" It used to sting. But over time, I learned something. The doubt of others says more about them than it ever did about me. Now I use it as fuel. Every time someone underestimates me, I smile a little because I know what's coming. What I hope people, especially young women, take from my story is this: you don't need permission to be great. You don't need someone else to validate your talent or your worth. If you know what you bring to the table, stand firm, stay kind, keep working. Because one day, your truth will be louder than their doubt. Today, my garage looks a lot different than it did when I first opened the doors. We've got new equipment, a bigger team, and a waiting room that doesn't smell like old tires. But more importantly, we've got a new energy. People walk in now knowing exactly who they're dealing with. There's pride in that, not ego, just confidence that's been earned one repair at a time. But what I'm most proud of, it's not the money, or the contracts, or even the headlines. It's the Saturday mornings when I see little black girls walking into my shop with wide eyes and curious hands. Some of them come with their dads. some with their moms, but all of them with that same spark I used to feel standing next to my granddad. And now I get to be the one handing them the wrench, showing them that they belong here too. I started a mentorship program last year called She Can Fix It. It's small, just a few girls at a time, but the impact, it's real. We talk about cars, sure, but we also talk about grit, about how to hold your ground in rooms that weren't built for you, about walking into male dominated spaces with your head held high, not because you have something to prove, but because you already are the proof. People ask me sometimes, what if he had never walked into your shop that day? And I tell them, he didn't make me. That billionaire didn't give me a gift. He gave me a moment, and I was ready for it because I stayed ready. That's what life does when you keep showing up. It gives you chances that look like challenges. And if you've done the work, if you've stayed true to who you are, you rise to meet them every time. So if you've ever felt looked over, laughed at, or underestimated, I want you to hear me loud and clear. You are not alone. Your dreams are not too big. Your light is not too bright. And no one gets to dim it but you. Keep learning, keep grinding, keep showing up, even when the world tells you you're in the wrong place. Because one day, the same people who doubted you, they'll be asking for your help, and you'll smile, not out of spite, but out of knowing that you were always enough. You were always capable. You were just waiting for your moment. If you ever felt underestimated, remember my story. You don't need permission to be powerful. You just need to believe in yourself. If this inspired you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that lift you up.